get started here with some public comment here. Is there anybody here from the public that would wish to address the Joint Transit Advisory Board? Bev?
Is there anyone else? My peers here? Any of my peers?
Just for you. The audience is growing though, this is good.
Okay, I know. All right, I'm here today to tell you all about a conversation I had with somebody here who's lived in Park City. Her family's been here since the early 1900s. She lives in Silver Summit, and she needs to get to Prospector. She's got her own business, and she is up to here. So I want you to read this because I wanted her to come and tell her story, but she wouldn't come. She wanted to stay anonymous. So I told her I respected that, and I understood, but I'm going to tell her story anonymously, and I'm going to tell it like she told me. So this woman lives in Silver Summit. Okay, also know that I have a real low vision problem. Very severe. I know I look good, but all right, macular degeneration. Okay, hi, Angela. Oh, hi, there goes that. Okay.
We didn't hear that.
I am working on Tuesday, so I cannot attend. Even if I was free, I am very upset about the decision that UDOT is no longer doing anything about the expansion of 248. I am disgusted that a few residents who live in Old Town can cause myself and thousands of others commuting to make this ski town run to lose countless hours of our lives sitting in traffic away from our kids' homes and other activities that would be a much better use of our time. We are never considered when it comes to the people who have all of the time in the world to make our lives inconvenient. Maybe if I got that extra time back from traffic jams, I would be able to be on committees and volunteer my time in a more productive manner. Sorry for the rant, but I am sick of the hypocrisy of those people who have moved here and caused my life to change. My family has been in PC since the early 1900s, so I have a right to complain. And I said, I understood, that she didn't want to come. She told me not to repeat her rant because she felt, but she's anonymous, I hope. And I mean, I was just, this is like, I want to represent her. And I want to represent all, I forgot about them, you know, who struggle to get to work. And and she feels totally unrepresented. She said she wrote a letter 2 years ago that was never responded to. She wants to take her family out of here. She really does. And I know there's things in here that I don't agree with, but it's her perception, and there's no way I would ever convince. I couldn't say, well, but, you know, and she has this beautiful route designed. And when I found out she wasn't coming in, I said, well, will you just go over that route again with me so I can share the route with them? No sale. But the route had Silver Summit, so the backside is trail side. She needs to be in Prospector. It could be Old Town. It could be anything inbound. So she had created in her mind this route that would involve Silver Summit, Silver Creek, Route 40, Quinn's Junction, and in. Yes, she can take the bus. It would take her 1 hour, she said, and 42 minutes to get on the brown Silver Summit bus to go to Kimball. And when she got to Kimball, she would have to go in town, and then she'd have to catch the red to Prospector. And her time is too valuable. So I just wanted to share that story because I think we all forget about that piece of the segment of the population. Secondly, e-bikes. The e-bikes had a great year in my mind. My e-bike life was great because I bought one. So you talk about the numbers going down with e-bike rides, and I just wanted to throw out that could be a factor that a whole lot of us, a lot of us have gotten e-bikes. And I was an e-bike user, and I have my little fob, but I have my own bike now, so I'm not riding. And I've talked to people I know, And I've said, how many people do you know, would you say, that have their own e-bikes? One guy said, who lives in Summit Park, he and his wife have one. They ride their e-bikes to the field house every day, or every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for our class. But they said, he said, oh, millions. And I said, come on, John, I'm collecting data here. And so he said, at least 15. And I know like 20. And so just between the two of us, and I think those numbers are going to affect bike share, and they are a game changer. I highly recommend, if you all could get a discount for residents, to buy e-bikes, that'd be awesome.
Thank you,
Thank
Beth.
you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Linda? No? Okay, Kim, sorry.
I'll just add that when we had our presentation last week, we talked about that very thing, that it's been, the e-bike program has been like an e-bike purchase instigator.
Yeah, oh, I know
It's
that's
a
great.
gateway drug.
We think, yeah, the gateway.
This Summit Community Power Works had a program going for a while where you could get, it was basically a bulk buy, and you could go down, I think all the places were down in Salt Lake, but you could get discounted e-bikes down there, pretty good prices, and I don't know if that's still going on or not, but you could, on a $2,500 e-bike, you could save $500 or something like that. It was pretty substantial. And if they're still doing that, maybe we need to just go back out and get the word out to people. I mean, it's not exactly the season for it, but
No, but we can look into it
yeah.
throughout the winter. Okay. All right. Hearing no other comments, we will move down the line here. We do have a consent item on here. It is the Title VI program. If there's any further discussion, glad to entertain that. There are a few little administrative changes in there too. There's some titles in there related to Public Works Director that will be changed to Transportation Manager, and then we'll make those modifications, and then we will get that submitted to UDOT. That is a plan that goes every 3 years, so this will be our plan that we'll have for the next 3-year triennial period. And then we also have a lot of dedicated staff to make sure that this plan is, I think, a little more better tended to than there has been in the past. And that's why we wanted to make sure we brought it forward to this group. I don't think this group's ever really seen the plan, honestly. And we also want to bring this to our city council as well, and make sure that they're aware of this plan also. It is a federal requirement.
Can you just refresh what the, I missed this one in the packet, just what the.
It is the civil rights program, essentially, to make sure we don't discriminate, that we go out and go to the public, to underrepresented communities. So make a better effort to go to the senior centers, the Christian Center, to other Latino or underrepresented communities also, and making sure all that is documented. And then we submit that information to UDOT to make sure that it's we are in compliance. So Caroline's very familiar with these programs as well, so we look forward to her input and support in implementing the program.
I had a couple questions. When you talked about some of the service standards and things, like the express route, we had the discussion in one of our past meetings that truly is not on a 10-minute increment, but that's in here. And then the overall on-time standards were in here. I think it references something like 95%, but in another report, you talk about it being at 80%. So I don't know is this more goals or
It is more
how
goals.
close, do they have requirements that we must meet certain standards in order to get certain types of funding, or?
No, there's not standards that we have to
Okay.
meet. I think what we'll end up looking at is a very, very high standard, the 95, and Jerry and I were talking about that also. And it also is affected by the seasonality as well.
Right.
Our winter
Like
on-time
today.
performance is gonna be definitely impacted versus our summer on-time performance. And then the white, honestly, is not on time point, so that's not really an apples to apples comparison because it doesn't have a time point, it's just a headway frequency. But as we update our short range transit plan, which is further on down the agenda, I think we'll look at what those on-time performance standards are as part of the short-range transit plan, and probably look at, and we talked about this yesterday, me and Robbie did, looking at seasonality on-time performance. You know, is our summer at 90 versus at 80 in the winter? So I think that's a part of a discussion, and we'll revisit those on-time performance standards.
Comment on that,
Mhm.
Alfred. The Title VI requirements are really about not discriminating against minority and low-income neighborhoods and allowing them to evolve with a lower quality service, so overcrowding or late buses or older buses or whatever. So having these categories is important for us to make sure we have benchmark data on it. And then when we do major service changes, we need to review whether it results in a lower level of service for those.
And we actually had that discussion, I think, 2 years ago when we amended or modified the yellow. Some people in Prospector said that they'd be willing to live with 40-minute service if it got them more directly to Deer Valley. Well, that 40-minute service from 20-minute to 40-minute can adversely impact those people that are just trying to get their kids to school or daycare. That could mean a whole nother hour for them, which means an hour of lost wages. So Jerry's right. I mean, we do look at that, and we will be more diligent when we look at that.
Okay. And then I know up front there was some things sending it back and forth with our staff. And I'm fine with approving it, but I would like to add that if we could do that, allowing our staff to just review it with you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely. With that, we will go ahead and advance that, and we will submit this program to UDOT. We'll get it posted on our website as well.
Thank you.
And, all right, moving on down the line. Next is, sorry. Oh, yeah, monthly ridership report.
Do you know what page that starts on in the document?
That's much of a traffic jam towing cars out of town.
Thank you.
You found it? I've been just tracking it by where the scrolling bar is.
So this is our monthly ridership report. Robbie's done some updates to this also, if you want to walk us through it. We have the month over month annual also, and I think this is something that Councilman Joyce asked for also. So this gives us a bigger snapshot rather than just this month-to-month comparison.
Yeah, so first of all, so this is the September ridership report, and it's pretty much been very consistent throughout since we began reporting this. It's been double-digit increases. But there's a few, I think, really strong, there's some good and there's some things that could be improved. Anyway, the biggest thing I believe that is a positive is the cost per passenger for 2019 versus 2018. To expand the service, we spent money, and that is, I think we kind of talked about this last month, but that's now you're beginning to see the payoff of we increased our hours by a whole bunch, and now we're seeing the costs balance out and the ridership increase. So that's a improvement in effectiveness and efficiency in that cost per passenger. The passengers per hour are down slightly, but we've increased by a lot of hours. So just in order to maintain the same sort of improvement, I think as we move along, we will see that as people continue to use these routes. The biggest thing indicating that is the 7 Pink. If you recall, over the past several months, that is usually down from what it was, in the 20%. Now it's down 6%, which is kind of remarkable because that route was totally reconfigured, and you could tell the ridership was just really, it wasn't up to par with what the route was before, and this is the first month where you're really seeing it show up. But I guess the negative, and it's not that much of a negative, is the red and the green saw about the same ridership that they saw last year in the same month. And then the black route is really, it's continuing to show really good usage. The brown route is one that has kind of dipped too. and that's something to keep an eye on. So that's the monthly report, and I'm going to go into the monthly annual report, unless anybody has questions about this one.
I just wanted to point out that the purple, that increased
Oh, yeah.
percentage, obviously that's proportional because the ridership was really low to begin with. But we did meet with Montage and Steins and a few hotel properties up there and adjusted that schedule to better meet the employees' schedules too. And we've seen that response in the numbers, so that's why you're seeing that number.
Yeah, last year it only ran for like 3 days of the month before it got cut.
For what it's worth, the math on both your purple and lime are way off in that, like, I look at the lime, it's up 400%, and it says it's up 133%, and your purple is up, got a factor of 20 or something, and it says it's up 174%. Am I reading that wrong, or?
So it should be all of the percentage or a percent change, so
Yeah,
not a
when you
percent
go
difference.
If you look at purple, it went from roughly 400 to almost 6,000, and that should be a 20x. So both, either the number's wrong or the percent's wrong, one of the two.
Yeah, okay, well, the formula for all of them would be the same, so I'd be happy to double check that and get back to you.
Is the lime increase still just digesting the changes that were made on the pink and the brown, or whatever those changes, I forget which ones?
The lime is, so it was sort of another seasonal thing where there was the 16 lime and then a different lime. So there was two.
You extended it into Deer Valley.
And we extended it into Deer Valley, which, yes. So the lime has honestly been totally reconfigured. It was serving the canyons, I believe, from Park City, and no, not further out. And now we're going from Ecker to Deer Valley.
Right.
And it has replaced a lot of what the pink ridership was, and that's where the pink was so down. Is it had moved from the pink to the lime.
So do we know who's still using the pink? I mean, pink has always sort of been this issue of, should we have the pink, should we not have the pink, is it redundant, is it effective, is it efficient? So it looks like it's starting to stabilize at some level, around 16 to 15,000 per month. And that's not bad, but do we know who's using it and why they're using it?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say like I know everything, but the stops that are just sort of right there, past where the neighborhood, I don't know what it's called, by the quarry, like that stuff back there, there's some apartments, and yeah, and they ride to Silver Summit. There's a big workforce that moves from that area up to the Canyons Village.
And also that route is, we're proposing to extend that route in the winter, so you'll hear about that next.
But yeah, it's a lot of residential collector, Helpman, a lot from Silver Creek, and then also from Pine Brook and Jeremy. So, and I think
Use the
people are.
pink. Jeremy would use the pink, that's
Yes.
the
Mhm.
primary.
It goes in the park and ride, and I think people are starting to realize that, now it doesn't come into town anymore, but it's really not that hard to make that transfer because there's so much service at the canyons between the Lime route and the White route. So it's just kind of getting over that transfer anxiety, I guess, too. But it is a lot of kids that coming out of those neighborhoods too.
I think, sorry, Steve, I was going to say, I think maybe the math difference is percent change, a percent increase.
They're all wrong. I'll just tell you.
Okay.
I mean,
If you look at the numbers,
Yeah,
the one
they're-
should be 400.
They're wrong.
Okay.
Don't try to tweak the math. Figure out why.
No,
it's
no,
wrong.
I mean, they should all be the same formula, and so that's really embarrassing, and I apologize. And I will give you an update on that as soon as we leave this meeting. Okay, so the next report would be the monthly annual. So this is, I feel like I need to give some explanation for this because we're combining data sources that are they're not the same. So in order to accomplish this, I have had to combine city routes because that's how they were reported in the previous year that I'm trying to compare to. The same thing, the pink and brown were reported as Kimball East and West.
Yeah.
So we've had to just sort of make some choices that are doing sort of the best that I can to match apples to apples. So you can see in the sort of the legend, the city routes are including Prospector, Square, Park Meadows, Thanes Canyon, Prospector Express. The seasonality, they're not always running every month. They might run partially in a month, and then there could have been some changes from year to year on how frequently they're running in the shoulder season. So the other big asterisk, I think, is on the 11 black. When we switched from hand counting to using APC counts, the data quality suffered for December and January, so there would likely be missing data from that. So the increase would likely be higher, but these are the numbers that we have collected, so that's what we've reported. I don't know if anybody has any questions. You can see the increase in hours. It's been a pretty significant increase, and the increase in passengers. Again, it's not keeping up with the increase in hours, but it's not bad. Like, I think this is what you would expect as far as a transportation planning perspective, that when you're changing services like we did in the middle of this last 12-month period, that you're going to have some lag in catching up with the ridership with the increase in hours.
Kimball? Do you want to talk about Kimball at all, Caroline? Or let the numbers speak for themselves?
Yeah, I think the numbers speak for themselves. I did see there was a decrease in ridership, but I think that's reflected in, if you see the heat map where our pickups and drop-offs are. A lot of our riders are workers, especially outlet workers, and if anybody has been to the outlets, you see that every single store is hiring.
Yeah.
So there's nobody to work and fewer people to ride, and I'm not concerned about it at all. We continue to see great ridership. The people who ride it love it and value it, just like the rest of the system. Any question?
Do you have a time of day? I mean, I wonder if people use this a lot when they're working, like they run and grab lunch.
There's
or
one
run and
on
do an
page
errand.
70.
There we go.
Yes.
Thank you.
Here.
And that mirrors sort of what we've seen for the 3 years that it's been active. It's always that like 3 to 7 p.m. period that has been the busiest, highest demand.
And do you attribute that to employee ridership that you were just mentioning, or is that
It's
some other factor?
So it's employees, but anecdotally, it's also people who maybe don't work in the area but live in the area. We've had riders that ride it to Base and Rec at that time, or that are coming home from another transit trip like on the White and use it to run errands and then get back to where they're living. So it's a combination of factors.
I know this is just totally anecdotal, but when there's events going on up at the Olympic Park, there's definitely people that are using it to get around the whole Kimball Junction area. You know, whether it's to go get food, or usually it seems like that's what they're doing.
And then this wasn't included in the staff packet because it's not, because JTAB doesn't technically have oversight of this service, but beginning November 20th, the CV Connect, which was previously funded directly through the CVMA, will extend into other neighborhoods of that are within the CVMA area but not part of the CVMA, and that's Red Pine and a few little residential neighborhoods up and to the left. So they will be part of the Connect service, funded through the county, and they'll use it just like the CV Connect users do with the same app, demand service, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week.
Everything on the west side of 224 at this point?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. But functionally, they won't. Users won't see a difference between CV Connect as it went last year and the expanded service area.
Okay.
All right, and the next thing we have is, we started to do this quarterly, but this is the feedback customer feedback report. We put together a to date and categorize those in terms of what the issues were, and then what we continue to do is focus on these areas when we have our lead transit operator meetings and our supervisor meetings, and when we do our onboarding. Right now we're doing a lot of hiring, getting people familiar with the system. Something that I do want to point out is we have this missed stop and drop off. Some of the complaints we get related to that is that people don't realize that the white sometimes is an express route and it doesn't stop or it doesn't pick them up. So again, I think that's something we need to focus on, and making sure that our customers and also our concierge at the hotels and things know that as well and be able to communicate that to them effectively. So.
I'm looking at, again, Steve's math, you look at last year, 342 over the course of the year, you go 1 month of September 60, and I could interpret that a couple of ways. One way is more people understand how to give feedback, and that's a good thing because they're probably using the app and they feel more comfortable giving feedback, so I would look at that in a positive way. The negative way is we've doubled or slightly over doubled our number of feedback interactions, and they all not all, but a lot of them tend to be on the critical side rather than the positive side. And so do you have any thoughts on how we're interpreting that or what we're doing with that?
We just continue to focus through Vinny and Kim being on board, and Jerry as well, and our new supervisors, just continuing to focus on customer service.
And I will say, I don't think the 60 includes Mary Krista at all. I don't think she did once.
Yeah,
there we go. Bobby can confirm that.
We have it, we haven't heard from her.
This last quarter, there was a big increase in feedback compared to previous quarters that we've looked at. Part of that has probably been from we've gotten our feedback channels are all functioning at the way we would expect them to be now. And then a big part of that also is the update to the app that happened during this quarter. We got a lot of feedback about what happened to the app. So that was a big one.
So I will bring up go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the other one is requests for service. That had almost never been feedback we'd get.
I will bring up what we discussed a little bit previously, which I think is a good idea and really good for our electeds. And I think we're trying to get there, but that is if we can categorize how many of these are those like people misunderstanding that the bus actually doesn't stop there, so that when Tim looks at this, he says, okay, well, we got 66 complaints about missed drop-offs, but 38 of those were people not understanding the route. So then we are really reflecting the quality of the service, and that there is something that you have done to address it, or that it's more of a communication issue, and that way it's not like, oh my God, look at all these complaints. It's like 200 of those complaints were valid, 30 of those were just a misunderstanding, and this is how we handled it. And I think that's useful again when our elected officials are talking to the public about things that are going on in the system.
Yeah, there's a good example that I have. Somebody had given some feedback about a driver using their cell phone, and after the complaint, they went and looked at the video footage and determined the driver actually was not using a cell phone. And so that complaint was maintained in here, because I'm trying to just maintain the record of any complaint, so there is context that could be provided to,
And do you respond to that complainant?
Yeah, the whole feedback process would. Yeah.
Because I think that transparency and having people understand that there is a robust process that they trigger once a complaint is filed, and giving them some feedback quickly, not 2 weeks, not a month later, but like, hey, we've investigated and here's what we found, so that you understand. Just making a courtesy follow-up interaction engagement with you is very helpful. The one thing, and thanks Caroline for interpreting that missed stop and drop off, that's helpful. The one that stands out to me, the only one then that stands out to me is driver complaint. And then of course there's going to be, we'll have to go through and take a look at the films and see which ones are valid and not. That applies there also. But that's still, because we do view our drivers as our ambassadors to our transit system, to the community, and they play such an important role And we also know that at the wage that they're being paid, they're not being paid to do that actually specifically, and we can't capture the people that we would necessarily capture if we were just capturing ambassadors. So kind of a catch-22, I get it. But
I think I have an idea. Maybe in the next JTAB report, I could do sort of a word summary of what are people talking about with driver complaints, to give some context to what driver complaints are, because they are oftentimes a missed stop where the person complains like, this driver does this all the time. So then it's a missed stop and a driver complaint.
And sometimes it can be, we get a lot about the temperature on the bus. The
Yeah.
driver has the heat up too
Yeah.
high. And so, I mean, that gets thrown in there too, so.
You can remove callus completely.
That's right. What was it, steamy? Is that what she said?
Yeah, it's too steamy on this.
So there is a lot of context within there that, it's not all just like the driver was mean and, or did a terrible job. It's oftentimes really mundane, almost trivial issues, but to have that context would be valuable for you guys, I think, so.
So maybe if it's resolved, we can do, the proportion of the column that shows, like 20% of those 66 complaints were resolved or unsubstantiated or whatever, just so you have a visual representation. And then another thing I might suggest is when we get the positive feedback, I would put the narrative in the packet so that, again, our electeds can see what people are saying in a positive sense and then repeat that out to our community.
Yeah. Okay. There was a positive feedback from this quarter that we actually presented last meeting about somebody who chose to live here because of the bus system. So we do get positive feedback.
So.
One thing I would suggest is just be a little careful about the example you gave about, the white line drove by them and they said I got missed. It's like, when you get that, you can go, okay, yeah, we weren't supposed to stop, so it wasn't like a driver failure. At the same time, if you see that enough, you have a communications issue. So to just kind of eliminate those and not count those and whatever, you're actually missing the point, because the point is that person's standing at a bus stop and they expect that bus is going to stop, and apparently there's not enough communication going on that would explain why that bus didn't stop. And I'll make up something that may be just stupid, but if you're at the Little Hyatt or whatever it is out on 224 coming in that they just built, if there was a sign there that said, express bus comes by every 10 minutes, if you want to catch that, you can go up to bus stop, at the transit center or something. Just that little piece of information, that may be, again, a dumb thing to do, but now the person's standing there and they go, oh shit, my bus isn't coming for 20 minutes. I can walk, 5 minutes and catch the express bus. You just fixed the problem some, at least. So I just caution you, a lot of times people are like, oh, I don't count those because the person didn't understand, and the answer is, no, that's your problem too. So don't get rid of too many of those, or at least be very careful about how you get rid of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Any other questions on this item? I know we got a few things we need to get to here, so I will move on down the line. We have some proposed winter service changes, some of which are routine in nature. I don't know, Scott, if you want to walk us through what these changes are.
Sure. So on November 25th, we're going to have our early winter service that we usually have about this time of year. We'll have, as part of that service, we'll have the early morning, late night citywide start up, and those run from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., just past 2 a.m. We'll also start up the 4 Orange Silver Lake bus again. The Park City Salt Lake City Connect bus will start running on weekends. It also will add on the 901 bus. We've had a little adjustment on the 901 and the 902 to hopefully better serve the connections coming out of Park City. We had people complain they weren't able to make the connection, so we've backed up some of the times, or just one of the times on that one, and we've brought one in a little bit earlier in the morning.
Are those the two, the 901 and the 902, those are the two Salt Lake City buses that are out numbers?
Yep.
Okay.
One comes from the south part of the valley, and the other one comes from the north part of the valley.
We also will have our full winter service start on December 6th. So as part of that, we will have the one red. We'll extend out to Quinn's Junction to better serve Quinn's Junction area with 20-minute frequency. We'll also keep in place the Deer Valley portion of the red, which we've on and off done in the past. The 2 green, we're going to keep that as is, the same routing as it's doing currently, except it will extend it to Deer Valley. And the 3 blue will run a different routing than it has been doing in the past. It will be running backwards through Thames Canyon. This was something that was in the short range transit plan. People complain about taking so long to get back to Thames Canyon, so we're going to try running it backwards to get them back to Thames Canyon more quickly. It also will increase the level of service through Thames Canyon and Park Meadows. We'll have buses going both directions through those areas. So we see that as a very positive thing.
Was there any thought on the red where you're running it out to Quinn's Junction? Was there any thought about stopping it over in Park City Heights at all? I mean, that's getting built up pretty quick.
Yes, we did look at that. It is not feasible for a large fixed route vehicle to service that area right now, as is.
Is that a statement of the population or a statement of the streets?
Streets.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that something that'll change as the neighborhood gets built, or is that a long-term problem?
So what we're proposing to do is modify the dial ride. Right now it doesn't really operate as a dial ride. You still call it, then you have to go to these stops. So we're going to use a tablet software and do an on-demand and serve that area. And that'll also be able to open up the on-demand more to the general public also and serve the homestake shuttle without it just being dedicated to the homestake. And then also be able to serve the Christian Center, which we've talked to the county about also, and Old Town. So that's how we would serve that area. It would just be on demand.
Okay.
Yeah, for now it'll be on demand. In the future, we'll look at what we can do as far as a fixed route through there. But
so now that the red is proposed to go out to Quinn's, this is very important to the community and something we've talked about with Caroline, and something that's been important to me personally is, the fact that we never served the Quinn's Junction, our hospital area, the Peace House, the NAC, the health department was kind of always mind-boggling to us personally. But now that we're proposing to serve that, we have to provide ADA complimentary paratransit service. Right now, if a person is in Jeremy or wherever they're at and they want to come they want to go to the hospital, that ADA passenger has to transfer to the dial ride, and of all populations that have to transfer, we should not be subjecting our ADA folks to that. So this being able to extend out to Quinn's means we have to serve that area with ADA. So now they'll have a direct route, direct access to there. We also got an email from a teenage girl and her mom that her daughter won't go to the NAC anymore because she has to transfer in the winter, and it's just too burdensome on her. Now she can have that direct door-to-door service with this ADA service now too. So that's I think something very important to point out to the quality of life for our ADA passengers.
And will this just be a winter route, or is this, do you foresee this
year-round.
being year-round?
Year-round.
Cool.
Yeah. So, and this is, I think, one of our just our next recommendations in the short-range transit plan was to serve this area. And again, it was something that's been near and dear to both me and Caroline's hearts to be able to serve that area out there.
So we also had the 7 Pink extension out to Summit Park there. So we were able to do that extension without any additional buses. So there was some increase in cost due to the mileage addition to that. It will go up I-80 and come down Kilby because there's no good place up at Summit Park to turn a bus around. So it's not ideal, but it is doable, and I think people will still like to have that service there. So.
And this is something the county requested, and I talked to Woodward, but it'll serve Woodward, it'll serve Wildman, and it'll serve Timberline as well. So again, one of our last big connections, I think, out in that area. So I do live there, just for full disclosure. I will be able to walk to it easily.
How much time does that add to the route?
Right now, I mean, Scott can probably speak to this, but the bus had to dwell out in Jeremy anyway for 10, 15 minutes. So that 10, 15 minutes now is just built into that schedule. So
Oh, that's great.
yeah. So
Just use existing dwell time, so.
Okay.
We'll have to keep an eye on it to see how that affects the on-time performance of the route, but it is doable.
And cost-wise, last year we had spent a considerable amount of money with Homestake, and the cost per passenger and all that was very, very high. This way we can still serve the Homestake area and those other areas on demand with little to no extra cost. So, and again, what Scott said, we'll make sure we keep an eye on that, because the unknown is how many ADA passengers and rides are we going to get requests out in Summit Park that now we don't have to do. It's just because that's such a far, deadheading out there for one person and driving all the way back in. So we'll make sure we monitor that. And again, going back to these monthly reports, you guys will be able to see that information, not real time, but very, very frequently on a monthly basis. If it is the will of the advisory board, we will move on implementing these, and the next step will be a lot of outreach and marketing, making sure that our customers are aware of these changes, especially the blue route. I've already gone to the Prospector HOA meeting a few weeks ago, or last week I guess, at Sally's. Talked to them about the red and making sure that they know if they want to go to the mountain to not get on the red outbound, or you're going to have a 45-minute detour out to the hospital. So we'll continue to talk to the HOAs and market, and working with Caroline also.
Do the green blue swap colors again at Snow Park? That's how
Yes.
I describe it, but I don't know.
Yes, I will. I am interlining those blue and greens, yeah. So what I have planned is, if you go do the green and come back to the transit center, from the transit center going to Deer Valley, it'll actually change right there and become blue going up to Deer Valley. And so the person on the bus, it's going to go the same way up into Deer Valley, both of those routes. So the person on the bus isn't going to notice any difference. And hopefully on the app, it'll make more sense if it changes color at the transit center before it goes up into Deer Valley.
Okay.
So that's the plan with that.
Trying to eliminate the ghost bus again, Tim.
I know we discussed this a little bit at the last JTAB, but what do these service changes do to bus inventory? How does it stress our?
The pink, it doesn't affect it because
Right.
we're built into that. In the red, I think we're at peak. We're 37 buses.
We're at 27 buses that we need to use at peak, and we have 27 buses we need. 36 is our inventory, so we have 9 spare. But the problem we have is those 9 spares get used up pretty quickly on those electric buses if those are not working properly, which we've been experiencing some issues with.
How about on the paratransit fleet? 'Cause I would expect that you're going to, if you're expanding, especially the area we're expanding to, we're going to see more ridership on that.
Yeah, and we're really repurposing those homestay shuttles is what we're doing,
Gotcha.
and putting those back out to more of the general public, which I think is more responsible of the use of that equipment than it is being dedicated to those Main Street employees. So we also have 7 new cutaways coming also.
3 new.
7 total, yeah, 3 new. And then we also have 2 Dodge Caravans. We have a pretty good inventory of paratransit vehicles. So, and again, this is really kind of that micro transit model also, so we can use those vehicles, I think, more effectively and more efficiently.
So, I'm just bringing this on you now because I hadn't thought of it previously, but once the pink extends to Summit Park, can we please get a weekly report just for the first couple of months regarding requests for paratransit service, any missed trips and their ride times?
Yes.
So we can just make sure we can make sure we're in compliance with all those requirements, and then just, monitor the demand for that.
Absolutely.
And then number 2, what is the name of the app in the App Store that people are gonna have to use to get the dial-a-ride to the general public dial-a-ride?
Right.
Yeah.
So for right now, we're going to keep the phone number for the dial ride as one option, and then the other app that we're looking at is Double Map, as being the provider of the on-demand service booking. So Double Map is the name of it.
Well, it won't be double map in the app store, will it?
Well, we can give it a different kind of,
Okay. But you don't
Skin.
know for sure what you're gonna use yet?
no, we're still working through all that
Yeah.
right now, but
Okay.
we'll make sure that you're aware and involved.
I'll ask the
I just-
simple-minded question, is there no way that Ride Amigo, since we just kicked that off as yet another app that people need, is there no way it fits into that?
We can look at that also. We're still working through kind of the technical specs on that, but we want to have that up and running in the next couple of weeks. So that would be,
Boy, if it works, I mean, you know, everyone's a burden for you and everyone's a burden for the public.
Yeah.
So, you know, the more you can keep it down to, you know, we already have parking and transit and other transit and, you know, it's like,
bikes and.
yeah, bike, yeah, I've got a whole folder of them, that's Park City. So, yeah, at least eliminate it for good reason.
Okay, yeah, and we can just, why don't we report back about where we are next month also. Okay.
Anyway, you can create an app folder for Park City. I just scroll through until I find it, and I never know where they are, so it takes me forever. But, yeah,
We'll meet
point
after
well
this
taken.
meeting.
Maybe
A lot of apps.
We'll plan an extra 15 minutes at next meeting and you can go over tech with Tim.
Yes, a lot of apps. The next thing we have on here is a budget forecast. This is something the county's been requesting. They are in their budgeting process. This is probably something we need to work through, maybe some more details here. But this is essentially the budget. You guys adopt your budget on January 1, so they're working through that process right now. Just to give them a number going forward, because I don't know that that's really been the case in the past, is that we've really arrived at what these numbers are that we're going to be billing for. So what I've taken are the numbers from last year. The way we bill the county right now, in terms of breaking out the routes, is we have county-specific services, and then there's the regional transit services that come out of the new sales tax. So that's what these total right now. I think Caroline wanted to take a harder look at this number, and the number that she had submitted to the budget committee and to you, I believe, also, Tom. So we can work through that on a staff level if that's.
I think we're good on a budget perspective for the county's budget. The one question I had about this number, does this include the extension of the PINK?
It does.
It does,
Yes.
okay, this estimate.
Yes, and we've also put the 3% escalation in there, and that's really not necessarily just for inflation, but it is, well, I guess it is inflation. Driver costs, fuel costs, things like that might be occurring, so. Next one down the line, we have the fleet schedule here, and I will pass this on.
One last question now for
Yes,
us
sir.
to make sure, and this, when you have the county specific and the regional, this also includes all of the bus replacement and facility surcharge and all that kind of stuff is in there as well.
Yes,
Got it.
it is. Next, we have the fleet schedule. This is a request to bring this back to the group here, and I will hand this off to Kim and Jerry.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to scroll to the next attachment. So this is basically the plan schedule for fleet replacement, and Jerry actually designed this schedule and used a lot of data points to decide when things would be replaced. And obviously the FTA has guidelines on useful life, and so we're taking that into consideration here.
It's really
So
small.
we've got the year, the mileage, the purchase price and replacement cost of vehicles. And we stagger those replacements through the years. This plan takes you all the way to 2033. Our initial newest buses that are going to be coming are the 3 cutaways. That'll be the paratransit vehicles. Working on a professional services agreement right now to get that finalized. So that'll be the first ones on property. But then we've got some Gilligs that we need to replace in 2021. And we're assuming we'll be replacing those with electric buses. So the cost you see there does include the battery portion for the electric bus. So they are more expensive, obviously, than the diesel buses. So this whole plan assumes electric going forward for our buses. Jerry, if you wanted to give any additional background.
Well, this is something that needed to be updated. It had been a while. And so it's important to have this in front of you so you can do your grant planning, decide how much of the income spent on vehicle replacement. That's one of the things that's assumed in here is that as we work with Brian and UDOT to get our hands on all of the prior year money that has not been spent, we're assuming that all of that, if it's available for fleet replacement, goes into this. It'll make a big difference. We're not too far behind, so you see we're going to be replacing 2006 vehicles in a couple of years. So those are going to be, 14, 15 years old when they're replaced. And that's actually a really good bus, that 2006 Gillig, so I don't think we'll have any issues getting them to that point. Transitioning to a full electric fleet comes with some expenses, so the buses are more expensive and you need more of them to run the service than you do of diesels, just because you need to charge them in the middle of the day. And we're still experiencing some reliability issues with the Proterra Electric. So this assumes that for the next 5 years, we're replacing on a 1.5 to 1 ratio. So every one diesel bus will replace with 1.5 electric up until about 2025, and then we're assuming that those get more reliable and go to 1.2 to 1 replacement. And I had a chance to meet with the UTA folks last week, and that's about where they are. They're long-term expecting that electrics are about 1.2 or 20% less efficient or less, less productive.
Just question on that, but I know you guys talked to Proterra a lot. And obviously from the first batch of buses to the second batch of buses we have much longer range and can run them a lot longer. And I know they keep making buses, everything for batteries charge a lot faster. From your discussions with Proterra, does it look like we get to a range and or charge speed where that's really a non-issue anymore? I mean, they really would be toe-to-toe with a diesel from that standpoint.
Can I make a comment about it? So I was reading about a city in China who has an all-electric fleet. It's like 116,000 buses. It's a ton of buses. And their conversion rate throughout the whole thing ended up being 2 to 1. And that's just what that's what they accepted. So
one thing that we are going to look at doing, Steve, in group, and I know Caroline had this question about going out and doing a solicitation, is that Gillig is coming to market also. So there's other additional technologies coming to market. So I think it would behoove us to go out and do a full RFP. The reason we've been going directly with Proterra is because we've been getting those grants under the Low-No program. And under the Low-No program, you're allowed to sole source that. As we go into other $5339 and $5311, we're going to have to go out to procurement anyway because we can't sole source. So I think it'll, as Gillig's a lot more diligent, I think, in their R&D because they're not a one-trick pony. They're a diesel company too, so they've waited and waited and waited until they've worked through their technological constraints. And I think they're going to be a lot more reliable also. So that's something we're pursuing also.
That's the industry hope, that you get to a 400 or 500 mile range electric bus. Mm-hmm. Nobody's even close. No, the industry's maybe a third of the way there.
What are we getting on the ones that are our longer range ones?
It really depends on the vehicle, but
yeah,
it's between 100 and 160 or so.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a little bit more than that. All right.
Yeah, in the summer we've been getting closer to the 200, and it depends on the routes also. So.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you have in here, it says all equipment purchased with Federal Transit Administration funds on behalf of the county shall be recorded in the equipment inventory and shall serve as formal record of the county's interest in this equipment. So where is that reflected?
So that's not reflected.
Okay.
So if you read to the end of that paragraph, there's a comment in there that at the time of the original and the 2009 interlocal agreement, that's how the parties were tracking it. Since that time, the buses have been intermingled, and so, like this morning, there was a diesel bus on the white, so the county's contributing fleet replacement funds every month as part of the invoice, and
Yeah, before the way the interlocal agreement was written, is that certain buses would be allocated to certain routes. That's how it historically was done. Now, as Jerry mentioned, they're commingled and we put different resources, and now our routes overlap so much also. That's something, based on the next discussion and the governance discussion, is probably something we need to address with any interlocal agreement amendment.
Okay.
But the county's contribution is a calculation based on how many buses it takes to run the county's subsidized routes. And then what is, assuming it's a 12-year bus, what's 1/12 of 1/12? So 1 month's worth of 1 year's worth of replacement cost. So the formula is still the same based on the routes, the number of buses required to run the routes that the county's being paid for. We just aren't recording title.
So the only difficulty with that, I think we've acknowledged this before, is that if there was ever an extrication of both parties from the agreement, what do we do?
Yeah.
And that, I'm not saying that's imminent, I'm just saying that is contemplated in the ILA, probably needs to be contemplated in the next ILA in some way.
Definitely. I think
So I think you have a legitimate claim to having equity in those vehicles because of your contribution.
And that is one of the things, I think we have a kind of a running list of things in the next go around of the ILA, and that would be one of them also.
So from the standpoint of, I don't know exactly how to ask this, but the increased cost of moving to all electric, some uncertainty with moving to all electric, has there ever been a scenario run where we don't move to electric as fast or do some level of diesel purchasing along the way to make up, I mean, if there's a scenario where we don't have the money to keep up with our schedule or the technology isn't there?
We can run that scenario. It's been more of a policy discussion from our electeds, so that's kind of the direction or the path we've been on, but I think it would make sense to run that scenario out too, and plug in some of those diesel numbers versus the electrics.
And internally, we have had some of those discussions, very robust discussions with Jerry and Alfred and our finance team. To date, our success in getting those federal grants has kind of prevented that inevitable from happening. In the event we hit a big recession and all of a sudden the federal grants dried up, we would be in a much different situation, and we'd have to do a very different analysis on our future purchasing power and inventory and what type of technology to give to the policymakers to then make a different decision at that time, or to evaluate alternatives. But we absolutely have, but because of these grants, we've been able to put off that discussion, hopefully, or the necessity of it. Doesn't mean that we can't show that analysis, but we have done some of that back on the napkin.
Sorry, go ahead.
Has there ever been discussion of using the diesels on the express route? I mean, I know we do sometimes as a stopgap measure, but aren't they more efficient if they're running longer and have fewer stops and put out fewer emissions?
Yeah, and we do run and historically the thinking was that the marketing of the electric express, I hate calling it that, just call it the express. It's the white express. I don't care what runs on it, as long as
it gives us that flexibility.
Exactly.
Where are we actually being more sustainable in practice?
And we,
how we utilize those buses. Should we have the electric on one that's has more stopping and starting, where it's then putting out fewer emissions?
Yeah, and we can run those out also. We haven't, I mean, like I said, historically, there's been that kind of that philosophy of it that needs to be on that. I don't share that philosophy. Whatever is the most efficient.
Well, it's, it is a nice marketing tool.
Yeah.
But is that truly then doing the most that we could be doing to meet our sustainability goals?
Yeah, and now we're running, several buses on multiple routes, so it's kind of, it's not as relevant as it once was, I guess. So that's something we can look at those numbers. Scott does look at those productivity numbers about, what do we need resources wise, how do we meet these headways, building, charging time also into that scheduling and those time points. So
I thought that was part of the original discussion, was that the first batch of buses, first 7 or whatever we got, were pretty limited range, and that we were pretty much counting on being able to, put them through chargers at both ends, or at least one end. Every loop they were going through chargers, where if you have, the red line out wandering around, you don't have that unless you pull it into the bus barn. I thought that was at least how part of it was explained to me.
That's how, yeah, that was the original route structure, was kind of these bookends, meaning Kimball and Old Town. Now that some of these buses, we're going past Kimball and we're going to Ecker on the line. Now we're gonna be going out to Summit Park, so it's evolved a little bit since that point, but that was the initial thinking. You're right, Steve.
And I hope over the long term, Jerry and I have had some conversations about, as we move away from the necessity to sole source, as Gillig and Bluebird and all of these other companies increase their electric capabilities, that we can drive down costs long term. As the technology gets better and it becomes more competitive. We had this initial period where we were bleeding edge, but I think we're really looking forward to the marketplace getting more interesting and more busy and more competitive. So it's a really good point.
So a couple other things in this chart, if you want to spend more time on it. So to that point, we assume that electric buses don't escalate in price. So it's the same price, all the way to the end of this.
We hope they get
And
cheaper,
hopefully
but we
we
didn't.
can.
The batteries and
The other
project that.
buses escalate 3% a year. We've also assumed in this that we're able to secure $2 million in low-no federal grants every other year. And after a discussion with Jim Barker and him checking in with the congressional staffers for the committees that approve this funding, they think that electric bus funding is likely to be strong for the next, foreseeable future. So we felt, confident that we could put that in
And
there.
we've done a lot of work in this area. We've met with the congressional staff. We've had staff come out to the state of Utah and visit multiple different transit systems. We've done a lot of work to try to incentivize and show them the impacts in our community to keep this revenue stream going long term. I think we've had 3 or 4 different members of either congressional committees or staff in the state in the last 3 months alone.
And then the staff and the infrastructure.
It's very important, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I know
Sorry, for the notes, Park City did not sole source any of those. They met their procurement requirement through their grant application.
Correct. That's a more accurate statement. I know the next topic is something we needed to spend some time on, so I will move us along. This is the next steps in governance. Now, I'm talking to Caroline, and then I think Caroline had talked to Kim and Doug as well, and we've had some discussions on our end also, is to frame this under a broader governance discussion under the umbrella of, okay, what are these next steps here? So I kind of want to give this discussion to the electeds a little bit, but the steps that we have outlined here are, as part of these discussions, are an interim amendment to the interlocal agreement. I think that's necessary in terms of our billing structure, some of the other things we talked about with some of the asset management and tracking, and really just to be reflective of the new kind of financial situation with new funding sources. So we would look to do that amendment within the next 1 to 6 months. I think that's honestly just realistic, given we're going into the winter and Sundance and all that fun stuff. And then we would update the short-range transit plan. That is due for an update. It was done in 2016. That really has kind of a shelf life of 3 to 5 years. We have submitted a letter of intent to UDOT for 5304 funds, and we estimate that effort will cost between $200,000 to $250,000, and that's an 80%, 20% match. And then as we work through the short-range transit plan, we would recommend that a new interlocal or cooperative agreement be hammered out as part of that short-range transit plan, and really be called out about what that structure looks like and what's inclusive of, and also nail down, what is that billing structure. This could focus on kind of us doing a joint contribution to a core level of service is something we've talked about, and then if there's additional services that the city wants or the county wants, those are kind of funded through discretionary sources. We put additional funding into our transit budget from business license fees, staff transfer fees. We also have resort city sales tax, so we could allocate that to different areas. But again, that's just an idea right now. So I don't know if you wanted to cue this up, electeds, a little bit more about the conversations you've been having. I think what was agreed upon when we had this discussion last time is that the JTAB members would kind of go back and talk to their respective council members and kind of report back here, and then we would move forward with these next 3 steps.
We're in process on that, obviously, and I think we're probably within, I would guess within a week or so, we'd be ready for a joint meeting.
Yeah, I think anytime we're ready. I think it would be great if we could get both councils together as we discussed. I don't know if we need one more meeting with just the smaller group within JTAB to discuss what we learned as we moved out to our fellow council members. I think it's pretty obvious that the ILA needs updated ASAP. And then having some path to move forward towards exploring other government structures.
Okay. We're all.
I would agree with that. I don't think, well, I know that we haven't taken any detail to council to, because we haven't arrived at any detail. We just kind of arrived at this high-level agreement, which is what Kim just stated. And so, if we're looking to bring any more than that, we probably do need to have a smaller group meeting before we do to get some of that detail and specificity. If we want to open it up and just go from here's where we all have agreed at the JTAB level, and I think there's going to be quick buy-in from Park City Council at that high level, and then work to achieve those details, as a joint. That's another option. So those are the 2 paths. I don't really have a preference for one versus the other.
Yeah, we probably should have a JTAB meeting first, I think, and then move to our council. Our council just naturally, obviously, because they're not as closely involved, they have a lot more questions about what's going on.
And then how does that affect your timeline with the short-range transit plan, the ability to put into effect a short-term agreement with the ILA?
I don't think it would impact the schedule.
Okay.
I kind of built that 1 to 6 months, assuming that we would have another schedule. I mean, another JTAB meeting, but it's not going to preclude us from continuing to go like the short-range transit plan. We're going to need to work with Caroline on the scope of work and everything also. So I don't see that being any type of affecting any type of critical path.
Thoughts on that?
I think it sounds great, and if you're comfortable, I can work on getting the JTAB group together to plan the joint council session.
Okay.
So I'll take that as an assignment.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on that? So those steps sound consistent with what we've been discussing and you guys have been discussing too. Okay. The last thing we have here, and Sean's been over here waiting patiently. Should have probably restructured the agenda for you, Sean.
Great.
This is Sean Seeger. He's from Mountain Lands Association of Governments, which is the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the Utah Valley area. So they've taken the lead. I think we all sat down before we embarked on this effort with MAG, Heber City, Midway. Who else did we sit down with? UDOT, I guess, too. We had talked to Tom and talked to Caroline, too. But we had sat down and talked about how we would move forward with a short-range transit plan, or not a short-range transit plan, but a transit demand analysis specific to this geographic area, which is the Heber Valley, so in Wasatch County. So, Sean, I don't know if you want to build off of that at all?
Yeah, just however much interest you guys have, just let me know. But Mayor Bierman, Mayor Potter of Heber City, Mayor Johnson of Midway City got together about a year ago, started talking about what kind of transit demand exists in Wasatch County. I'm trying to understand, is there a connection possible between Wasatch County and Summit County? Would it be possible between Wasatch County and Utah County? So we started to develop a scope of work and looked at what the tasks would be, put together about $100,000 scope of work. We did performed an RFQ process, selected a vendor, LSC Consulting with Fair and Peers as a local firm. They've been working now for 4 months or so.
Yeah, approximately.
4 or 5 months. We look at we have a website called connectingwasatch.info, and you can go there now even and see the interim report that they've issued on existing conditions. You can also sign up for email alerts, so if there's additions to the website or if they're making announcements.
What, sir?
Yes, info, connectingwasatch.info. And making good progress. Some of the initial, if you look at this existing conditions, you'll see a commuter pattern map that's shown in heavy commuter shed going from Wasatch to Summit to Salt Lake. That's the prominent commute shed from Wasatch to Summit to Salt Lake. There's some coming down into Utah County as well. So we have some good numbers that we're starting with, and we had a what we call a advisory committee meeting October 3rd at the County Recreation Center. Had good representation from Summit, Wasatch, and it was a full house.
There's probably about 30 people there.
Yeah, a lot of interest. We were shocked with the interest that was there. We served barbecue, maybe that was the attraction. We're going to schedule another one November 14, same location at the Wasatch County Recreation Center from 11:30 to 1. So that's our next meeting that we've got put together. We expect that this work will wrap up in January of 2020. With that conclusion, that work will show what kind of transit demand exists from Wasatch County to other locations, and start to even give us some estimates on cost per rider, cost per passenger, if we were to run some of that kind of service. So this is funded 80% with 5304 funds, planning funds from UDOT, just like what Park City's been using, 20% from local funds. And Park City's got $5,000 in it.
Right.
Wasatch County's got some money in it, and UTA participated as well at a small dollar value. So can I answer any questions?
I didn't hear the timeline, I'm sorry.
Yeah, January 1st, January of 2020, we should have a final product.
Great. And then you'll come back to JTAB. Great.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and so with this plan, it allows us to go back to UDOT when we show the demand analysis, if it is warranted, which I think the demand is there. I think we all know that. But what does that service structure look like? It's most likely a commuter type service, I would assume, at least starting off. We don't want to start off too big, and then we talked about this at the group.
Yeah.
The risk would be to kind of overserve the population, and then not really have that return on investment, but to kind of create a seed project or seed service similar to what we've done with Camas, and build off of that and focus probably on the commuter. But again, I'm kind of speculating without seeing all of the data, but I think we can assume that's probably going to be one of the end results. So we can go to UDOT after that and submit an application for whoever's the recipient for additional $5311, which would fund the operating costs. So that's the.
I might have missed this too. Will it evaluate revenue sources, so potential revenue sources that could be tapped to support?
There will be a little financial analysis of potential revenue and expenditures.
Okay.
So where would the revenue come from, and how?
So the additional sales taxes that are available based on population and.
I don't know how much detail they'll go into. I would hope that we would get to sales taxes that are available. And I think one thing that I'm trying to keep in mind about this study is this was initiated by the mayors of the cities in Wasatch County. So Heber City and Midway City, which has been a real positive thing for us, to have it come from those municipalities. So I think it's a delicate conversation with Wasatch County, and I wouldn't want to jump to suggesting where the revenue will come from. I love the idea of a pilot program.
Yeah.
Start to see what is the possibilities as we run this stuff, and see what kind of ridership we might get, and then move into more detailed discussions about revenue.
So you don't think they're ready to put 2 ballot measures on the ballot?
Especially that school bond.
No, and I just meant optically that there are
Yeah.
a buffet table of revenue sources available. Not to even recommend one of them. That's a political decision or a community decision.
I think so, and I'm just maybe overly cautious about even talking.
No,
about
fair. Forget it.
Because of some of that history that exists between Park City and Wasatch County, and there's those of you that know that history, we need to be very cognizant of that. There's a piece of code in Park City's development code that basically allowed land developers in Park City to build affordable housing in Wasatch County, as long as there's on a free transit line. So I'm really super cautious about that and just wanna look at the demand, you know, and start to look at what the ridership might be, and then let the cities drive the conversation.
I thought the revenue discussion and also the cost of expenses, it seemed to be very eye-opening for a lot of the participants, although they seemed to not care how much it cost because the response was, well, UDOT will give us the money. So hopefully that made people think a little bit about the cost, because a lot of the participants seemed very surprised by the cost. And the fact that there's not 100% funding for that, just floating out waiting for them to snatch it down.
The trough.
Yeah.
The government trough.
Yeah, what I like about what we've done, this group has done, is working with UDOT with the 5304 funds to make sure that this demand study is checking all the boxes so that when we do approach them for any assistance, rural operating assistance, we know that we've done our initial homework and that it's qualifying for that. So we may find some state funds available to do a little bit of service there.
And that's what was really encouraging about the turnout that we had. We had, again, I think it was close to 30 or some people.
Yeah.
But it was from all kind of areas of nonprofits, social services. Mike Davis was even there.
Yeah.
So that was encouraging. But just if we do identify some of these revenue sources, if the communities, we built the support, that a tax may be a viable solution. So.
And I've heard positive comments from Wasatch County administration, including the manager, about transit service from Wasatch County stopping at Mayflower, Exdale, Maida, the special land use area there, and then continuing on to Park City. So it's just how we present it. I think, and that's what we're being careful about, and just want to use one step.
How's the survey instrument going? Is it strong?
Yeah, I had
responses?
about 400 responses
Okay.
to it. So.
And is it too sensitive to think that we could help with that, or are we?
I
Because
think,
a lot of our workforce
yeah,
is coming from Salt Lake or
I think
Summit
you're
County
helping,
or Wasatch County.
I think you're helping with contributing to the studies, funding your management of the study. Your staff is heavily involved in it, which is fantastic. And I think you're doing the job that you need to do right now.
Yeah, we pushed internally at the citywide email also, and then posted on the spotlight and
Yeah.
mentioned it on the radio before. And then we also did some tables we set up at Silly Market and things like that also. So we've done a pretty good job. 400 is pretty. I was surprised though.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Speaking of Maida, so they had at one time voiced an interest, I thought, in participating
Yeah.
in the process. Have
Yes.
they been involved?
They
And to what-
offered financial assistance,
Uh-huh.
and they continue to offer that, and we declined it because we didn't want to have any perceptions that a private party was influencing some outcome that is mostly relying upon public financing. And so we found ourselves in that situation a couple of years ago with another study, and that was used against the results of the study to discredit the study. So we just said, thank you for offering, but we didn't need the financial contribution to make the study happen.
And they did attend they were at the advisory committee meeting, so they participated in that sense.
You know, it may be one of those plates on the buffet table
Yes,
eventually.
yeah, I love it. I like that, and let's do the analysis, the demand analysis first, and then let's figure out ways to do a pilot program. And I like that.
So we will continue to keep this group updated. Probably an item that comes back again. I think our next meeting we have on the agenda is,
It's November 19th.
is that still, it sounds like we maybe just want to focus on this governance discussion again. Is that the appetite? And Caroline and I are going to meet to talk about agenda items going forward as it is. So we can start there if that's okay with you, with the JTAB members.
Well, I think my first thought was this group should spend the majority of its time on the governance discussion, but if we're doing that with the smaller breakout group, the task force, in a non-JTAB meeting, then I wonder about time use and how effectively we're using that time. So I mean, that's where I'm sort of wondering about that, if anybody else has a thought.
I mean, I think we have essentially the direction we need over the next month and a half to get service modified and implemented for the winter service. So if there's a desire to skip the November, I don't think I would be against that. And meet at the smaller group.
Well, what if staff works together and then you know, Carolyn will take input from her electeds and you can take
Okay.
input from ours about the necessity to have that meeting depending on the outcome of when Tim and Andy meet with Jerry and Kim and Doug. They feel it's necessary or not, or you guys might want to report in, just an operational report in, but I would say maybe defer that and let you guys decide. Maybe 2 weeks beforehand you guys can make the decision, or a week and a half. Did that soon?
Because we pushed this one out.
Ugh. Yeah.
We can, yeah, we'll work through it. We don't need to
Maybe
decide right
that's
now.
necessary, fair. So really 2
I
weeks
mean,
out.
hopefully,
We're gonna be skiing.
staff will be ready with the recommended interim ILA amendment in December timeframe. I mean, that's optimistic. You know, it kind of depends on how quickly all of the details of the building get sorted, but certainly a lot of progress is being made
Yes.
right now.
A lot.
Anyway, so
Well,
whenever
another
that's
way.
ready.
Carolyn, do you want to meet in 2 weeks or?
With like the whole JTAB group, I think a governance conversation is more effective use of time on the November 19th. That's just me, not with no input from
There's really
electeds.
nothing
I
pressing.
think operationally.
Today was the
we're
biggest
fine
discussion
to-
on the operation discussion
Yeah.
to make sure everybody was on board, so. And we can go start pounding the pavement with the public just for outreach. And we got the application, or we'll get the 5304 letter of intent in, so we can get that solicitation process going for the short-range transit plan, so.
And we really won't have any data yet anyways on the new routes. 'Cause
No.
it won't,
Right.
it starts November 25th and then
Correct.
early December, so,
Okay.
right?
Well, this has been very helpful.
Steve, I validated my numbers and they're correct, but I think I'm showing a number you don't want, and that I want some feedback if you don't mind. Okay.
He'll give you some feedback.
So up on there, I pulled up the percent difference calculator, and it has the same number, but I think what you're expecting is to see a percent change number, like an increase in how many it changed. So there's been a robust conversation between me and Franklin on what number is better representing what we're trying to display. Since some of these routes aren't a one-for-one change, so it's not a how much did it grow, we've chosen percent difference. But if people would prefer a percent change, I'm happy to do that too.
I think if you, ignoring what numbers you had up there, if you said, here I had 10 and now I have 20, it's
Percent
100%
change.
increase.
Yeah,
And
that's
if you
that's
said
so.
I had 10 and 100,
So
then
you
that's
want
a 900%
percent change.
increase.
That's what you want. I can do that. That was a conversation. I've never gotten feedback as far as, it's a very small nuance between which one is which, but it's actually a significant difference between the number that you get. So
Okay.
Yeah, so for those of us who took computer data entry to meet their math requirement in high school, what is the difference?
well, you can see that number is
No, I
huge.
see
So
the
that's the
number
apples to
difference, but
apples of
like-
like you had 10, now you have 20. So that's how much we actually increased.
So what's percent difference?
It's just the difference between the two numbers, basically. What is the percent difference from today and that time?
I don't see
So
there,
this
I
is
don't
showing
see.
a
Oh.
1300%.
Robbie, let's.
I mean, we
Yeah,
can take
we
it
can do it
offline,
offline.
but just note that
But I would
would
like to, I don't want it, because I feel like my number was accurate and I want to provide you the information that you want. So really,
Next-